So we have some pretty interesting developments regarding Microsoft and their future direction. A lot of big question marks regarding Microsoft's future in the video game industry, especially with the news of them really pushing hard for first party games to show up on other platforms. So essentially, pretty much making the point of owning an Xbox completely useless. Like, there's really no need to own an Xbox come next generation when they won't have exclusives anymore. But just one comment on that, it seems that the contingency of Microsoft having their games on other platforms is so that you use their service, whether it be Xbox Game Pass, which is the most talked about feature. Apparently, Xbox Game Pass will come to Switch. I don't know how many games can actually run on the Switch. Never mind, will actually make it to the Switch. So, I mean, I guess they could put Halo Master Chief Collection on the Switch because it's not too demanding graphically, because it's just them, remastering very old games. So I think they can manage that. But when it comes to games like Quantum Break, when it comes to State of Decay 2, when it comes to some games that are more on a demanding scale, I don't even think the Switch can handle it, never mind whether Microsoft will put the games on the Switch in the first place. And I find this very interesting because Nintendo isn't the type of company that really is open to letting other companies have services on their platform. Like, name one subscription service the Switch has that isn't the Nintendo Switch service, right? They don't really... I remember that was a big deal with EA. EA promised Battlefield 3 was coming to the Wii U, and they were going to support Wii U with all the third-party support. And in case you're wondering why that ended up not happening, why EA's relationship with Nintendo went so sour, is because Nintendo did not want Battlelog integration. They didn't want EA integration, like having an EA account. They didn't want third-party accounts being integrated with Nintendo's platform. So with that in mind, I know Nintendo is under much, new management ever since that happened, because it's been, 6-7 years since the Wii U came out. But call me a skeptic when it comes to these reports of Xbox Live, Xbox Game Pass, and Xbox services coming to the Nintendo Switch, because there may be validity to it, but I still feel like it's not going to be what people are expecting it to be. Like, I really don't see Microsoft services or Xbox services being fully integrated with the Nintendo platform, because Nintendo, even though they say, oh, we don't consider Sony and Microsoft competition, they don't want another company dominating their platform. Because if Xbox Live, Xbox Game Pass, and all these services came to the Nintendo Switch, you might have a situation where more people actually buy the Xbox service on the Switch than the Nintendo service. So I don't think Nintendo would like that very much. So I think, they're still in discussions. Nothing's been signed on paper, so I'm not trying to say the sources are wrong. There very well be a discussion with Nintendo, but I do think that those talks will fall through. So I don't think you should expect Xbox content on the Switch. Now, maybe they'll put a few games on the Switch that would work, like maybe have an agreement when it comes to rare games like Viva Pinata, games that would just work very well with the Nintendo platform and the type of audience that Nintendo has. Having like a Rare Replay or even Sea of Thieves, maybe not, but older Rare games that Microsoft owns the rights to coming on the Switch is very likely. But when it comes to like Halo, Gears of War, Quantum Break, and these big first party titles that they have, I'm a little bit skeptical. And then when it comes to Sony, there's no chance in hell. I know a lot of people are speculating that this might happen. It's possible. I do not expect Sony to let Microsoft into their platform ever. I don't see it happening. If Microsoft says, hey, we want to put Halo on the PlayStation, Sony would be like, yeah, hell yeah. But if the contingency is we want Xbox Game Pass on the PS4 or the PS5, and we want Xbox Live integration with the PlayStation platform, Sony will say hell to the no. That is never going to happen, because Sony definitely does not want Microsoft to interfere with their thing. So just wanted to get those two things out of the way, because I don't think Microsoft is going to fully integrate with Sony and Nintendo platforms and just be completely third-party, exclusively, kind of like Sega. So the title of the video is Microsoft becoming the next Sega. Will they eventually drop out of the console race? That is a possibility. I do think that the next Xbox very well may be the last Xbox. If they decide to go with the full PC integration, that very well may happen. If they do decide to go that route and it actually pays off for them, it's very possible they might just leave the console race altogether. But I do think Microsoft still sees a value in making Xbox consoles because it's kind of the entry point into PC gaming, or it gives PC gaming, it gives access to PC gaming to people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. So think of the Steam machine, but instead of a Steam machine, I think going forward, or I think the new Xbox that Microsoft is planning is really going to be less of an Xbox and more of a Windows box. I think it's going to have, you'll be able to run Windows 10 on the new Xbox. I think it will be fully integrated with most Microsoft services. You'll have Skype, obviously, which they've been having on the Xbox One. But pretty much everything Microsoft related you'll be able to use on this console. And it will be mostly for gaming, and it'll also be a multimedia device. Apparently, they're also thinking about releasing like a streaming-only device to test the waters out on that. We'll see how that goes. Apparently, they're planning on releasing multiple Xboxes, which makes me really think that they're taking inspiration from the Steam machines, because you have one Xbox that can only run 1080p 60 frames, which will be a step up definitely from the current Xbox, and will be a more affordable, cheaper option. But if you want that 4K 60, you get the better Xbox. And that really reminds me a lot of the Steam machines, where you have different builds, different quality. So that news, if it turns out to be true, makes me think that they want to maintain the Xbox console. They want to continue making them, but make it as a way of not necessarily stressing about the exclusives and all that, but really trying to put Microsoft services into the hands of people who otherwise wouldn't have it. So, of course, we're talking about gamers, or console gamers specifically. There's still an importance of having a main competitor to Sony's PlayStation. If Microsoft just decides to completely pull out of the console race and just stick with their PC thing, I don't think that would be a good move for them. I think the software sales that they continue to get from companies like Activision, EA, or just any company that puts their games on the Xbox store, that's still a huge chunk of revenue that Microsoft has that they would be fools to just miss out completely on. Because on the PC, Valve really runs the show. I mean, you have plenty of competition. You have the Epic Game Store, you have GOG, and you have a variety of different competitors to Valve Steam. And it's a more open ecosystem. That's why you have EA Origin. You have all these different launchers, Battle.net. So it begs the question, would Microsoft, if they decide to focus too much on the PC and kind of self-cannibalize their console market, is that going to hurt them in the long run? Meaning, are they going to lose out on a lot of that money? Because on the PC, if Xbox decides to, maintain a huge presence on the PC, and Microsoft really tries to position the Xbox platform and the Windows Store as a viable PC gaming service that would compete with Valve Steam and Discord and GOG and every client and launcher under the sun at this point, because you have so many different launchers. But would Bethesda, who has their own launcher, would Blizzard, who has their own launcher, and I guess Activision uses Battle.net now, so they're included in that, EA Origin, would they say for a second, hey, we do not want these games on the PC? Microsoft might have a problem then, because if they decide to focus on integrating the two platforms together, the two platforms, console and PC gaming, kind of have a different rulebook to them. Like, they're two completely different markets, completely different ecosystems. While they might have the same games on those platforms, the way that the industries work, respectively, are very different. Like I said, PC gaming is more open. These different companies, EA, have their own launcher. And, they're fine putting the game on the Xbox because there's no other option. But if Microsoft just decides to roll with PC, EA would probably be like, okay, no, we don't want you to have our game on the PC because the PC version of the game belongs on Origin. So that might be a little bit of a problem. But another piece of news that is very interesting, and Microsoft may have found a way to kind of circumvent this problem, is full integration with the Xbox One and PC. So your PC is essentially an Xbox One. So there's no separation between the two platforms whatsoever. Meaning that if you have a Blu-ray disc drive, it will be able to read the Xbox One discs, and you'll be able to natively, or some kind of software emulation, you'll be able to run Xbox One games on your PC without the need of even owning an Xbox console and just having a PC. Now, if they do this, then EA, Activision, all these different companies who have their own launchers on the PC may kind of have their hand forced at that point, because if the PC and Xbox are one platform, what are they going to do? Say we're going to pull our games from your Xbox? Because they're not going to do that, because the Xbox One or the Xbox platform is so huge that if they pull their games from there, that would not be such a good business move for them. So Microsoft may have found a loophole around that, which is, very, you have to give credit to the guys at Microsoft. They're the engineers over there. They are very smart, and they know what the hell they're doing. And let's talk about the gameplay in this video. The game is Sonic Heroes for the Nintendo GameCube, which is the version that I am playing, that you guys are seeing right now. It was also released on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, and also, I believe, the PC. Now, the reason why I purposely put Sonic Heroes gameplay onto this video, specifically talking about Microsoft and their future with console gaming, and whether or not they're going to pretty much become the next Sega and drop out of the console race, because Microsoft seemingly took the place of Sega in the video game industry. It was Nintendo, Sony, and Sega, and now it's Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Can Microsoft step out? Well, we already kind of talked about that a little bit. It might not be so beneficial for Microsoft to completely pull out and just become a third-party publisher. They don't have the same goals that Sega did. Sega did it for survival. Their console business was not working out towards the end. And Microsoft isn't failing. The Xbox platform is not failing. They're maybe not nearly as successful as the PlayStation platform, but by no means a total commercial failure. Sega went third-party because their survival basically depended on it. The Sega Saturn was a total abysmal failure, and the Dreamcast just could not compete with the PlayStation 2, and it was at a point where consumers pretty much lost all the faith that they had in Sega, that Sega's position in the console manufacturing market, it just wasn't going to sustain itself. Sega would have more than likely went out of business if they didn't decide to go the third-party route, and it's definitely paid off for them. They are making a good profit as a third-party publisher. They're not as huge as they once were back in the 1990s, but they're staying alive, and that's the reason why I decided to put Sonic Heroes gameplay on here. And I do apologize if the image is not like full screen, because it is a game from 2003, so back then they didn't have anything like 720p or 1080p. So having a full screen, I tried so hard to stretch the screen, did everything I could. This is the best I was able to do, so I apologize if the black bars, you don't like those, because, well, that's what happens when you have old games. But I don't think that Microsoft is going to have Master Chief on the PlayStation. There would have to be extraordinary circumstances for that to happen. I don't think the way things are going, that is going to happen, because if Microsoft really planned on going that route, don't you think they would have done that right now to begin with? Like, they would have put Xbox games on the PlayStation by now if that was really their ultimate goal. Their ultimate goal is to expand Microsoft services across different platforms. Sony is not going to allow Xbox Live to have a presence in their closed market. That's the reason why they're really in the console business to begin with, is because they control the ecosystem. Say with Nintendo, they control the ecosystem. They don't have any outside companies trying to influence the platform. PC, that's one thing, but on consoles, that's just not happening. We did already cover that. Point I'm trying to make is, it's not that it's so outlandish for Master Chief to show up on a PlayStation console or a Nintendo console, because how outlandish was it for Sonic to appear on a Nintendo console? It was just unfathomable to anyone who grew up during the 1990s that a Sonic game, Sonic Heroes, and before that, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were ported over to the GameCube. But this is the first game in the Sonic series, the first game that Sega actually published that was not released on their own hardware and was released on their former competitors' hardware. And that really set it in that, wow, like, the industry is changing, because Sega was huge. They were the number 2 hardware manufacturer, and then they turned into a major third-party publisher. And then that allowed Microsoft some room to step in and do their thing. But what people don't realize, when people are saying, oh, Microsoft is doing this integration with PC gaming and is trying to expand and kind of get rid of the whole thing with exclusives, is because consoles are dying, that medium is dying. These people don't realize that this is Microsoft we're talking about. Microsoft's vision has always been to integrate the Xbox and PC platforms. Why is that? Well, first of all, obviously what I said earlier, because PC runs on Windows. Windows is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft sees that PC gaming is so huge that they want a piece of the pie. They want a piece of the action, as I said in my earlier video about the Microsoft Store a couple weeks back. Remember, the original Xbox, the very first Xbox that was supposed to come out, was pretty much supposed to be a Windows console. It was supposed to be able to run Windows. It was supposed to be like a miniature PC that could, that was focused on running games. But it was supposed to be integrated with Windows. And then the Xbox 360, well, most of us remember a thing called Games for Windows Live. That didn't work out, but that just shows you this has nothing to do with consoles dying. This generation of consoles is far outpacing the previous one. While PC gaming is growing exponentially, so is console gaming. But it's definitely bigger now than it was 10 years ago, and Microsoft was literally doing the exact same thing that it is doing right now, trying to integrate PC and Xbox. They tried it with Games for Windows Live. You had a good amount of games that would release exclusively for Games for Windows Live and also for the 360. Point I'm trying to say is this was Microsoft's plan all along. The reason why they haven't done it until now is because they totally failed with Games for Windows Live. It was a total abysmal failure, so they kind of backtracked a little bit. But now they're on that path again. They've always been on that path to integrate PC and the Xbox. Now, what does that imply? Well, Sony, if you just look at the raw numbers in terms of units sold, has already won the next generation. They already won because it's going to defeat the purpose of owning an Xbox, for better or worse. A lot of people are still going to buy one, but if literally every single one of their games are going to be on PC, then PC gamers are just going to play it on their PC and not get another Xbox. So that does mean that Sony is going to, on paper, win the next generation. But when it comes to actual revenue, maybe Microsoft might be a little bit ahead of Sony and might be more profitable than PlayStation brand, their gaming division. So we'll see how things go. But I don't think that Microsoft is doing this out of desperation, out of just seeing that consoles are dying or that they're just not doing well with the Xbox. People are saying, oh, the Xbox One was a failure, so that's why they're doing this. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just this has been the plan all along. They've always wanted to integrate PC and console gaming, kind of unify it. You see that with Play Anywhere and all these other things that Microsoft is doing to try to get a cut into the PC gaming market and to just unify these into one cohesive platform instead of being two separate ones. And I honestly believe that this is Microsoft's goal, is to unify PC and console gaming together so that they could dominate both industries, honestly. Now, whether or not that's going to pay off at first, I think their console sales are going to take a nosedive in the beginning, but it depends. Maybe they'll pull a trick out of their hat. Maybe they have a feature that's just better than any exclusive that you can have, or just maybe they're just trying, when it comes to their console, they don't care if you play on the console version or the PC version. They only care that you use their services, obviously. But it also has to do with the console, them focusing on marketing it as less than a direct competitor to Sony, and the true console gaming experience is more like an entry-level way into gaming. Not PC gaming. If you're not into PC gaming, this is a good entry point into that. I think that's what their goal is. And of course, as more and more news comes out about the next generation of consoles, we'll explore this further, but I do think that's what Microsoft's goal is, so we'll see. But it would be a little bit foolish to compare this to Sega and their situation. But a lot of people have tried to draw parallels between Microsoft and Sega. The indication that Microsoft is leaving console gaming, which that alone is very questionable. I don't think that's really what they're doing. But the other thing is, well, their Xbox is a total failure, so that's why they're going to PC. It's just stupid things that a lot of fanboys on the internet like to say, uninformed people that don't understand how the industry works, and fundamentally failing to understand that this has been Microsoft's goal all along, to unify PC, Windows rather, and Xbox into one platform. But I do want to know what you guys think about Microsoft's current plans for the future. Do you think it's a good thing for gaming? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think that it's going to pay off for them? Do you think it's going to be better than what they tried last time? I do think it's going to work out a little bit better than with Games for Windows Live. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I always appreciate your insight. Thanks for watching. I appreciate everything you guys do for me with the likes, with the comments, with the views, and the subscriptions. It all means a lot to me. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and I will see you guys later.